recordings will be available. I should probably turn on recording.
Yeah, that would probably be a good idea since we're promising to make it available.
Yeah, I know. It's funny how that works. All right, it's 9:01. I'm sure a couple of other folks will be joining us. Let's see. There's the we'll go a couple of more seconds here. Yeah, Blaine and I were talking this morning about snow on the beach in Galveston, snow on the beach in Florida. Cold,
Cold, yeah. It's gonna
cold, cold. And it's going to be another cold day here where I'm at. It's almost 70 today. So.
No sympathy from us Canadians.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Derek.
Here you go, Derek. Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. All right. I'm going to share my screen and Blaine and I were chuckling this morning. Thanks for bearing with us as we do this in a very non-elegant way, as you can tell,
Very important.
when we share slides and content. It is it's our opportunity really just to it's not about going full slide and all the elegance behind all the professionalism and showing slides. It's you can see how many slides are in the deck and all the other. It's an opportunity really for us to have the conversation. So I'm glad everybody's here. By the way, so before I start getting into content for today and good morning, Tanya, and kind of getting into it. How were the exercises from yesterday? Did anybody go back and revisit the exercises? Because we're now day 3, so we're hitting the halfway mark on our journey to Friday, which will begin the 30-day countdown to the rest of it, by the way. But
Because
day
there is a
one,
30-day challenge that follows.
yeah,
Yeah,
we talked
30-day
about
working thing.
Monday. We talked about your core values, who you are. What did we talk about yesterday? Does anybody remember?
I don't know why my camera's not working, but
Don't worry about
That's,
that. Yeah.
don't worry about
okay,
it. Hey,
okay.
Chad.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chad.
What did we talk about yesterday? It's a long time since yesterday.
Long time. And
Long,
you were talking about.
long time since yesterday. We talked about defining what's the definition of leadership. And that there's I'll pull this up just so I read it on the side here. Leadership is the activity of influencing others, no command and control, to co-create coordinated movement in pursuit of a worthy ideal. And then we had a long conversation kind of around that topic. Blaine, you were gonna look like you were gonna say something
Yeah,
too.
and the way that we go about doing that, this is where the ACT model comes into play. Awareness, increase awareness, increase the number of choices I have available. Context generates meaning, and meaning is what drives behavior. So part of the challenge for leaders is to be able to effectively create meaning and define meaning for the folks that they're working with. Communication mastery, this is how you do that. It's not accidental. You need to master the process of communicating. And it's not just a word exchange. Communication is a very complex dynamic. And then we have commitment. And that is, in the model that we work with here, it's a state of being. So how do you influence? You influence through your state of being. Yeah, not necessarily with your words. Yeah. One of the axioms in leadership that I work with, and that both Dolan and I work with, is people will almost never give you what you ask for. They give you
No.
what they perceive you're willing to settle for.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal. Yeah. And that is a function of your state of being. And then the final piece has to do with trust, which is a topic in and of itself.
Oh boy. Indeed. Which we'll spend more time on. So today I'm gonna I'll share my slides here, and then Blaine, if you see anybody coming in, if I
Yeah,
miss them, just kick the door open for
I'll
them.
kick the door open for them.
There you go. Perfect. So we are officially in day 3. Let me get everybody organized here so I can see you all, put you on another screen so you're now all over here. And that way I can keep tabs on everybody in the group. And so in day 3, when we remember in the week we talked about, as far as the agenda goes, as I mentioned, Monday was discovering your why. Yesterday was definition of leadership, dimensions of leadership, and your dimensions, the ACT model. Today we're going to talk about leading through change. And one of the comments that Blaine mentioned yesterday was change creates friction. Friction creates heat creates light, and so change is good. So we'll talk today focusing in on that topic of change, and as a leader, not the strategy and tactics of change, but as a leader, how do you lead through that? And that's really going to be our focus today. We promised we would do this every day so we remember it. I'm going to go right to it. And Blaine, do you want to
Yeah,
talk about the leadership universe in
just a
context of
real,
where we are
we're
today?
not going to
Yeah.
belabor this. We're touching it every day. This is the primary, this in the four pillar model. These are the primary models that Dolan and I work with. Vision, strategy, tactics, that's important, but it's also familiar to most people. The real value and the real traction occurs when you learn how to and you manage to develop skills in the domains of working with mindset, kind of opening up that exploration. Um, Consciousness is cause, manifestation is effect. Consciousness lives in mindset. And, when I'm talking about consciousness, I'm really talking here about that subliminal background that, influences all of the decisions. 95% of the decisions that we make, 95% of the behaviors we engage in, according to, neurological studies, is driven by the time we're 30 years of age, is driven by mechanisms that are out of sight, out of mind. It's belief systems, it's, points of connection, that we've generated meaning around that we don't really notice. And New Year's resolutions are a great example of this. I'm going to lose 5 pounds or 10 pounds or whatever it is. And usually within about 10 days, that has gone by the wayside because something else has kicked in. And it's habituated. I mean, these things are habituated. And because they're habituated, we don't really notice them. So that is where we begin to work, the majority of the time. What happens as a consequence of that is it opens up this whole thing that we call spirit, which is where aliveness, imagination, and creativity lives. And this is where we want to be able to tap into, when we're working with our organizations, with our people, and even if, with our families. There's a little demarcation point, and we haven't talked about this yet, but there's a demarcation point between mindset and spirit. And that
Mm.
demarcation point is imagination. Imagination lives at the threshold of the spirit. And it's the use of imagination, not daydreaming, but the intentional use of imagination that moves us into that spirit. And what actually puts a cap sometimes on my intentional use of imagination is mindset. It almost becomes kind of like a concrete floor that doesn't allow me to effectively access the imagination in the way that it's intended to be used. So that's what this leadership universe begins to speak to. And then the four pillars, Dr. White,
Thank
uh,
you. Thank
is how we begin to operationalize some of this stuff.
I'm just going to let you keep going. So,
Roll in, roll in, roll in.
but the four pillars, you can tell I'm jacked up on coffee. I had the opportunity this morning to meet with 50 franchise owners for coffee at 7 a.m. to talk about these topics, in particularly in relation to their businesses. They're all growing their businesses and investing in their service bureaus that they're working on. But this really was a model and a set of principles that are put together that are focused on, when we think of as Blaine talks about the leadership universe. So once as we know we have the leadership universe and those components, how do we act on it? What do we do with it? And for the purpose of repetition, right? Because repetition helps us recall trust and autonomy. Trust is that piece. It's four parts. I trust me first. I trust you next. You trust you first, and you trust me next. Trust is one of those things that allows us to build autonomy. Well, so that we have freedom for people to take ownership, as you can see on the slide. Communication, Blaine just talked a little bit about communication. But with trust as the cornerstone, communication ensures that we have alignment, that everybody understands and that they feel safe in asking those questions. Janice, I think you mentioned it a couple of days ago. I think Janice is here. Janice, are you
Yeah,
here?
she's here.
There
Yep.
you are. I see you, Janice. Hi, Janice. And you mentioned this, that safe space, that feeling like I can do this in a conversational manner and I'm not judged by this, that we can have this as a conversation. I always tell people in meetings that one of the rules that I've always had as a leader is I'm not going to be offended until you tell me I'm short and overweight. When you tell me I'm short and overweight, then we got a different problem. Now I'm offended. And if I'm going into a meeting and I'm meeting with three people on a consistent basis, and all of those three people agree with me all of the time, I'm going to go get three other people
Yep.
because we're not progressing. So I treat communication has to have embedded that embedded trust into it, so everybody's working towards alignment. And of course, growth and innovation is that willing to experiment, which is trust. Trust. If you have a trusted organization, it gives everybody the willingness to try, to go do things, to experiment and think of new opportunities and possibilities. So you do get velocity and change. And then systems of accountability are really, again, is that aligned? Is everybody really in alignment and are they bought in? There's a great, we all watched, I'm sure we all saw clips of the inauguration. Sitting in one of the back seats of the inauguration was this guy named Jeff Bezos. And Jeff Bezos happens to have a little bit of money. But in 1997, Bezos had no money. And at the very first shareholders meeting for Amazon, Bezos talked about people buying in at 80% of the information they need. And we'll talk about this a little bit tomorrow during our conversations around decision making and other strategies. But it is making that committed decision to be aligned to an ideal, to that opportunity, to that worthy ideal that we're all working for. And that's where systems of accountability come into play. And that's part of it. So that's our recap for all of this today, going into it.
So, any
Today,
questions about that?
oh
Yeah.
yeah, well, all right, I'll pause. Thank you,
Yeah,
Glenn.
just real quick. Yeah. Any questions about that? Again, we're touching on this every day because this is kind of the foundational elements that we're working with here.
Bella.
Yeah, Bella,
Hi, Bella.
please.
So you raised your hand.
Yeah,
That's
I
very
did.
polite.
So nice.
I yeah, I love what you're saying. I totally agree, but I also hear some people say to me, or I have heard people say during the years, both leaders, team leaders, middle leaders, and employees, board members as well. Um, that's all these fancy words we use, buzzwords like alignment and committed and everything. It's like they say, oh, it's too much. It's too much of those words. How can we have a kind of communication that really connect us more, so we are committed, both employees and leaders?
Great
Is that
question.
something we can do?
Yeah. Most conversations, and this is a general comment from my side here, but most conversations in organizations are organized around what are we doing?
Yes.
What are we doing? The kind of conversation that you're speaking to is how are we doing? So one of the things that I work with some of the clients that have these questions is periodically, yeah, if you've got an all hands meeting, if you've got your regular staff meeting, yeah, you've got your agenda and it's almost always around what are we doing? The next, yeah, so carve out a day or one of those meetings where you don't have a what are we doing conversation, you have a how are we doing conversation. And that's the relational conversation. How are we working with each other? Are there speed bumps in the way? Yeah. What are you noticing in terms of your interaction with that other department? What's not what are we doing, but how are we doing? And that begins to surface some different kind of, literally a different class of conversation.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And I love Bella that you say that because when you do go into meetings and we talk and as leaders, and I've seen this in organizations firsthand where someone, a senior executive or a founder or a board of directors member, they'll go to a meeting and they'll come back and they'll use words like aligned and committed and they'll hit people with these words. And people go, yeah, I've heard this, I've heard this before. And in the US, we have this thing called Charlie Brown, right? And Charlie Brown hears want, 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 when the teacher talks. So it gets converted to the want, 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 want. So it really is, to Blaine's point, it's meeting people where they are with words that matter to them. The intention is you want everybody aligned. That's your intention.
Yeah.
But you're not going to tell everybody, okay, we're going to get today is an alignment exercise. Because you can't get there from here. So it really
there's
is
a
about the
distinction between
intention the intention.
Yeah, and there's that whole notion of intention. This is where mindset becomes really important.
Yeah.
You may have an intention for generating alignment, but where do people's attention go? What? Yeah, it's kind of like squirrel. And so they're running over here, and my intention was for us to go this way, but people's attention is drawn to this subliminal background noise. Meaning has been generated, and you don't know what that meaning was, which is why we start to pay attention to context. And again, the awareness. Notice what we're noticing. It's kind of like I saw you check out right now. What happened when you checked out? Can we? And this is part of the how are we doing conversation. So leaders need to be schooled in how do you bring that to the table. In a way that allows people to participate. That's what we're looking to create here, looking to work with. We've got a new member here, Marina. Welcome. I want to just acknowledge your presence.
Hi, Marina.
Coming in.
Hi, Blaine. Hi, Dolan.
Hi. So it's yes. We could spend an entire day today just talking about communication. I love the question, Bella. It was a great question. One of the challenges that will exacerbate this for you is the fact that in a lot of cases, it's not like the old days, right? When I was wearing a suit and tie and carrying a bag, I would, go visit 14 countries, which was a blessing. I got to go all over the world, and Blaine as well. Today, we don't get to do that. Today, we do a lot of this in Zoom. We do a lot of Google Meet. We do a lot of that kind of context. So the art and nuance around intention for the conversation and setting that intention really becomes even more important. The teams and all of my companies, I've been a remote person for 20 years, probably more than that. This has been my office for many. Matter of fact, it's upstairs in my home at the top of the stairs. On my door, it says Suite 200. My kids bought that for me years ago when they were in elementary school. So I get mail to my home address. It says Dolan at Suite 200. But it is really that art from a communication around setting the intention. And one of the easy things that, just as a tip, when you're starting that conversation, start with those words. The intention for our conversation today is, and it's amazing how that zeroes everybody back to, oh, what are we here for?
What are we here for? Yeah.
And
Janice, I see your hand up in the air.
I can appreciate this relative to an organization that is moving forward. What recommendations do you have whenever you're in position of being an agent of change and the organization is identifying people who are not producing or not adequate for the position, and you're trying to manage that transition, and those people that are threatened are doing what they can to resist, either without being underhanded or sometimes outright rebellion.
Great question. This is where the nature of meaning comes back into play here, because when somebody feels threatened, I mean, there's three primary responses that people will have to change. One is maintenance, which is my boss told me to do it, so around the water cooler, it's people going, what's that idiot? I've heard this before. Nothing's going to change. The dynamic that's going on there in maintenance is there's nothing in it for me. I mean, I know that, the business case, I understand the business case, but there's nothing in it for me. So why should I go that extra mile? Why should I put myself out? I mean, when my boss watches me, I'll look like I'm doing something, but it's really, the status quo. The other response, and that's the one that you're primarily talking to here, is resistance. And resistance is organized around a fear of loss. And
Yeah.
so when we're looking at people's response, particularly a resistive response to change, it's never about the change. It's about the disruption to existing relationships that the change is causing. And it's that relational dynamic that is in question here. So, from a leadership perspective, we want to be able to have a conversation with somebody about, okay, your relationship with your job. Okay, what's the fear? What's the concern? Yeah, you're going to be moving perhaps to a different role. What's the concern? So anything you can do to begin to reduce the amount of threat that people are experiencing, that reduction in threat increases their experience of safety. And once they feel as if they've been heard, legitimately heard for their concerns, they stop resisting to a significant degree. It doesn't go away totally, but that kind of a conversation takes some time, and it's an individualized conversation. But the key here is recognizing that it's not about the change. It looks like it is, but it's
Yeah.
really about the disruption to relational dynamic. And it's not just a one-on-one relationship, my relationship with the person. It's my relationship with process, my relationship with job, my relationship with fill in the blanks. That's what we want to be able to identify, because if we can identify what's the relationship,
Yeah.
then
It's
we can
interesting.
actually begin to do some problem solving.
Probably one less tag before we kind of go on and welcome Steve, is the kind of the idea, and it's a great question, Janice, because we talked a little, I think it was Ryan that brought up the question around the political, from how do you get Senate bills passed when people aren't in agreement, and how do you move things forward? Fear is based on the future. Fear is a fear of what's coming. We never fear anything from the past. We only fear for tomorrow. So fear is based on, to Blaine's point, based on loss. On the other side of it, one of the conversations then to have with the leaders is the difference between job and role.
Yeah.
I had a great, not to, we're not here to talk about our podcast because Blaine has one and I have one, but I had an interview with a guy named John Formica a couple of months ago, and I really enjoyed John a lot. And was a Disney executive, and John ran all of the Orlando properties. And we were talking about the difference between hiring for a job and hiring for a role. And that's why in Disney they call them cast members. They cast them as if they're going to be in a play. And it's an interesting concept. So on the leadership side, the question then also becomes on that side, are they in the right role? Forget title, but are they in the right role for your organization? Are they doing the right things based on who they are? Because you as a leader may be setting them up to fail as well. So there's two dynamics of responsibility there. They're in fear, and they may be in fear because they don't know how to do it, and they're not going to tell you they don't know how to do it because I'm afraid you're going to fire me. And then on the leadership side, you may have cast them into the wrong role, which causes them to have that fear. So there's a bunch of dynamics that can be put in.
So, and this is a great segue to what we're going to be looking at here today around change. Yeah. How do you lead change? You don't manage change, you lead change. And that's what we're going to look at here a little bit.
On that note, I'm going to put everybody back on that screen over there. Since we're
You're going to look
pretty
over there.
highfalutin with technology, I have two screens. And we're going to talk about it today. We're going to spend our time in talking about change, but the way Blaine and I, the kind of a quick story behind this, the nature of the conversation today is in 2019. Was it in 2019? 2019, I think, when you and I were doing
2020.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm old. I don't remember as much. But we were when there was this little event called a pandemic that hit. Blaine and I were doing a series of coachings and trainings on Black Swan events. If we think about COVID as the nature of what happened through that period of time, was considered a Black Swan. It was an unplanned for event. And so we're going to talk a little bit about today and spend time focusing in on change, creating resiliency and flow through unplanned events. And on this slide, we talk about, we're going to talk about as a leader, we will at a point in our career find ourselves managing through a catastrophic event. In Los Angeles, that is our current state in LA today. Because of fires and all of the other things that have gone on, it's a catastrophic event. When you master resiliency or have a plan for resiliency, it creates the opportunity for your organization to continue moving forward and the ability to make decisions and build confidence in your team. To the point, Janice, kind of around fear. We talk about fear as tomorrow. So it gives that ability to manage that. I'm going to give a little context for the word for Black Swan. We just so that I'm specific in this, for the sake of conversation, a Black Swan event, it actually was, I put a little tag at the bottom. This came out of a book from a statistician and a risk analyst. But as a business owner, Black Swan events and catastrophic events are things that we need to think about. And there's different scales and of severity or vendor make a lot of business or um, that one key person who sells the most in your organization decides tomorrow to leave. There's different terms for Black Swan events, but the key thing is that Black Swan events, it's in that middle bullet. It disrupts operations, markets, or industries that can impact financial loss, operational setbacks, and market shifts. And fundamentally, that creates stress. And that stress in turn creates fear. And when it creates fear, it creates a negative form of friction. So that's where we're gonna spend some time talking about that today. We're gonna talk a little bit about Black Swan events, and I'm gonna
Yeah. And the idea here is, again, I'm going to make a distinction between leading it and managing it.
yes. Oh,
When a
good.
Black Swan event occurs, oftentimes the default is, how do I manage our way through this? That's
Mm-hmm.
not the conversation we want to have here.
No.
What we're going to be looking at is, how do I, as a leader, position myself so that the folks around me have a sense of safety as we navigate through this. That's the leadership move. And that's what we want to be able to organize around. And this is, we go all the way back to the first day. I am, that question of I am. What do I stand on? What's my foundation? And part of the question, a question that oftentimes occurs here is, how do I know what to do when I don't know what to do? I mean, literally, how do I answer that question?
Yeah.
I've got a physician doctor that I'm working with that is in the LA area. And I was, speaking with him today. He's got 34 patients that lost their homes. 34 patients. And when we look at extreme impact, this will impact his practice. There is no question about that in a significant way, but it certainly is impactful to those folks that lost their homes as well. Yeah, unpredictable from the standpoint of, January 2nd, I'm just kind of having a good time celebrating the new year, and then the January 7th happens and my house is gone. What happened? What do we do with that? How do I know what to do when I don't know what to do? Those sorts of questions come into play here. So, we're going to manage our way through that eventually, but how do we lead ourselves so that we've got a sense of resilience? The stress load goes down, not only for ourselves, but also for the folks that we're working with. How do we mitigate the stress? And there's a word for that we're going to be looking at here, and it has to do with the nature of flow. How's that for a segue?
That was a great segue. I'll go on to let's go to the next slide. So there we go. Mr. Bartlett.
Yeah. I've done quite a bit of whitewater rafting. Wild rivers, and just, I've floated rivers in Russia and, Central America, South America, Japan. And when you're in a river, the current has a certain place. Yeah. Now the water's always moving, but if you're in the seam of the current, it's really effortless. You don't have to do a lot except kind of keep things, lined up, because, it will shift. But if you can just kind of anticipate where the current is moving, you can actually move down these rivers, particularly if there's a lot of turmoil. And you've scouted this a bit here. You can get through these things pretty quickly and pretty safely. And that's the key here, pretty safely, because I know where the seam is. And I've developed an understanding of what it means to be calm in that situation. So if I start to get out of the seam a little bit, my hair doesn't get on fire. It's kind of like, oh, okay, I know how to course correct. I know what the flow of the current looks like, so I can find that spot and come back to it. That's what we're looking to create here as a leader. And this is an energetic. This is about presence. This is about who I am in these environments, who I am in these situations. That's what we look to create. So the left side of this box, when we look at these pictures here, cultivating flow as the process of aligning intention, attention, and action to create a state of being, a state of seamless productivity and creativity. Now, an example of this, the first oil embargo that occurred in the 1970s. Dolan and I are old enough to remember that. Some of you aren't. But that first oil embargo, Royal Dutch Shell, the large, oil company, they had a group in that organization called the Scenario Planning Group. And their full job was to anticipate black swan events. They would look ahead and go, what if? What if? And they would land on something going, what if? Okay, what would be what would be the contingency plans if this happened? One of the things that they had thought about was an oil embargo, where the Middle East countries just cut the flow of oil to the Western countries. What would we do in that scenario? They had plans in place for that. So when that actually happened, they went, got it. Let's pull that one out and now they had to adjust some things, but it wasn't a catastrophic event for them. They had done some planning up front. They had anticipated some things. Businesses can do this. We do this in our families. We can do this, there's ways to do this, but it's predicated on being able to know where the flow state is. What do we need to bring to the table if this happens? How do we pay attention to that? Those sorts of things start to come into play here. This is where awareness becomes a major tool in the toolbox. Becoming aware. Leadership is the art of creating possibility. Possibility gets handed to management, turns it into probability, and then management turns it into a reality. So you move from possibility to probability to reality. And there's a segue that occurs here. The leadership role is to know where the flow state is so that we can, as elegantly as possible, pass it off to management so they can manage our ways through, this upset. So that's what we're kind of looking at, producing here. And the real question here is, how do I lead through change? The management of change is a different topic.
Yeah, it's such a great point. And when you think about leading through change, it really is about cultivating that flow. So remember we talked earlier about in trust and in growth, innovation, systems of accountability, about that key word with aligning. So it's really making sure that attention is aligned, attention is aligned to it. I'm going to share a PDF with everybody in the chat. So I'm going to hit go on it and give me a little bit of a thumbs up that you've got it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen just for a moment. And if you can open that up, open that document. I'm going to share my screen just so we can take a look at it. This is something I'd like us to look at together and just have a little bit of conversation around today. I'm going to share my screen again. See how artfully and tactfully I can do that. And everybody can see that screen? Great.
You're getting good at this.
Well, I got screens, man. I was thinking about getting another one, but then I think I'm going to break it all. So if it's working with two, I'm gonna stay right where I'm at. So the work. This is really an opportunity for us to kind of think about as leaders, when we're working, and there's, as I mentioned earlier, there's different degrees of a black swan event and different impact. And because everybody has a different company, we can't, or different different group that they're serving as a leader. We can't coach you through, the old adage. I think a lot of coaches make the mistake of going, well, if I was in your shoes, I would do X. That's not what we're going to do today. But I wanted to put this up on the screen today so that we can talk about setting that intention, attention, and alignment within your team. And these are things as a leader to think of, like in personal awareness and centering. Pause and reflect. Take a moment and start with you. Remember, we talked about trust. Trust is you. Start with you and assess your emotional and mental state before reacting. Bob Proctor used to talk about the difference between reacting and responding. He used to actually give everybody a coin that you could carry in your pocket. And you couldn't buy coffee with it, but you could carry the coin. And it said react and respond on either side. And you make a decision on, am I reacting or am I responding? And take a breath, that Zen-like moment where you do center. Maintain your presence. Focus on the present moment. You guys can read through all of this. And as part of the exercise today, that we're going to go into a worksheet here in a moment, I wanted to use this as a guideline for your thinking around Black Swan events, and you're thinking about how you presence yourself. And by presencing yourself, how do you in turn create resiliency and flow and reduce fear and reduce the uncertainty and doubt inside of your team so that you can continue moving forward. Just anecdotally, as a COO of an organization, I had the opportunity. I was working with just a beautiful team, and my director of operations had a heart attack. And when she had a heart attack, she had in turn had just joined the organization. She had built an organization. Her org chart looked like a palm tree. Everybody in the organization reported to her, and yet nobody knew how to do anything except her. And when she had a heart attack and ended up going out for months, that was a Black Swan event. We don't plan for heart attacks. Hopefully, we don't plan for heart attacks. And it created that opportunity for the team to stop, center, and in turn, not miss a beat, because it's when folks on your team are in the right kind of environment, you will be absolutely amazed at the willingness of the members of teams, both at any time, to rise to the occasion and commit if they understand the for the sake of what, and some of the things that we've talked about here over the last couple of days. They will rise to the occasion when you set those expectations. So this framework came out of that experience and some experiences that Blaine has had over his career to help give you a structure to think through when I'm in a Black Swan moment. What things do I need to do, and what things can I do with my team to help them rise to that occasion and continue moving forward towards that outcome that we're seeking to accomplish? Blaine, you want to add anything to that, or?
The idea of, leadership causes movement. That's what, we'll just kind of come back to a basic foundation here. We want to find a way to keep people moving, not with fear as the impetus. Okay. You can move towards something or you can move away from something. And ideally, we've got in place here something that we can move towards. Now, obviously, we're not going to want to stay in a in a dangerous situation. So there's a compulsion to move away from danger, from something that we don't want. But if you can harness both, the problem with just moving away from something is it's omnidirectional. It doesn't make any difference which direction you go, as long as it's away from the source of the upset. You want to, as a leader, have a directional focus that people can move towards as they move away from. And you harness that power, and you've actually got some pretty significant movement that gets created. This is where the worthy ideal comes into play here. You don't give up the worthy ideal just because there's a Black Swan event. You use it as a catalyst to organize the next step. How do we move, incrementally one step forward? Now, there's a model I was introduced to years ago that is useful here. And it has to do with how people actually move, how they behave. There's three elements that come into play when change occurs. And this is different than what I just spoke about around resistance and maintenance. The one, and just think of a three-legged stool. I grew up on a farm and I used to milk a cow and that kind of stuff. And I had a three-legged stool. Two-legged stools are a little wobbly. One-legged stool you don't want to work with. Three-legged stool is pretty stable. The three legs on this stool, for the purpose of this conversation here, is or they are familiarity or intimacy, familiarity, safety, and freedom. Familiarity, safety, freedom. Now, here, the more familiar I am with a situation, the more I understand what it is, the more intimate I become with it, the safer I feel. The safer I feel, the greater freedom I express in terms of how I behave and what I do. So when you're asking people to do something different than they've done before, they don't feel safe. It's because they don't feel familiar with, or they don't have enough information, enough, and not all information, but enough. This is where that 80% comes into play here. So this is the power of context, is it creates familiarity. It generates meaning. Safety gets created. Once safety's in place, movement can happen. And that's where creativity and innovation comes in. We're free to experiment. Now, in a real easy example of this, I'm going to make an assumption that everyone on the call here knows how to drive a car, knows how to drive an automobile. When you first started to drive, it was white knuckles. It's kind of, what do these pedals on the floor do? Okay. You want me to turn the radio on? I can't, what? Fast forward a number of years, we're driving down the road, we're talking on the phone, we're, doing all kinds of stuff, putting makeup on, drinking coffee. I mean, don't even give a thought to driving. That's because it's intimate. We're familiar with it. We feel safe. And because we feel safe, we're free to do all kinds of stuff in that car. That's kind of how this works. And even if there's a black swan event, somebody pulls in front of me, I've got enough familiarity that I can go, okay, got this handled, and navigate through that upset. That's that dynamic. And again, that keeps me in a flow state. Familiarity keeps me in a flow state. Where's the current?
Yeah, I think that's great insight. One thing I want us to not lose track of, and one thing you said, Blaine, that not that every now and then you say something that sticks, but just one thing I want to remind everybody of, and that's important because I didn't say it, but just to restate it, is when you are with the Black Swan event, is that worthy ideal. You're not sacrificing the intention of that worthy ideal and that intentionality as you're moving towards it because of the Black Swan. So that rock remains consistent, and that becomes the linchpin for maintaining, instilling confidence. So, and we have a tendency to have an, oh my goodness, and push the worthy ideal over to the side because now I got to go, and now I have to go do. I have to go do these things for the sake of things that don't align with the worthy ideal. And the team is lost because the team then says, but wait a minute, I thought we were going this way. And now you're not.
Okay. That's again, the worthy ideal becomes your North Star. It's the seam in the current. We keep coming back to that. Yeah, the river's going to push me off the side. Okay, that's an unexpected event, but I know where to come back. I may have to jettison a couple of things. Okay.
Yes.
This is, that kind of cost cutting. COVID is a great example of that. I was working with a restaurateur and then very enlightened restaurateur. This guy was really good. And restaurants all over the country, literally all over the world, were closing down. This guy, he kept his restaurant open. And the way he did it was focusing on the worthy ideal. Serving the community. That was his driving force, serving the community. So this isn't, it's not rocket science, but he ended up creating a takeout structure. That was something that they have never done. It was a sit-down diner. But all of a sudden now they're making meals available in a way that they had never done before. He kept his staff employed, and he came through it and actually emerged stronger because yeah, of how he focused on community development and the process of, providing, jobs for his staff. I mean, all of that stuff kind of bundled together. His focus was on that worthy ideal. And yes, he had to do some cost cutting. Yes, he had to do some shifting. Yes, he had to start changing how they did business. I mean, all of that stuff, came into play here. But that was the management side of it. The leadership side, yeah, he was cool as a cucumber. And it's not to say he wasn't stressed, but you didn't see him running around with his hair on fire.
Yeah. So I'm going to reshare my screen and make sure I get to the right screen. And I'm also going to hit a go in the chat. So there should be a brand new PDF in your chat, which is this worksheet. We were talking when Blaine and I made a commitment to you on day one that this was not a sit and listen to us talk challenge, 5-day challenge. So the worksheet that we have in the chat, everybody's got the worksheet? We're good? Nicole, how you feeling? You doing all right? Okay, good. I see you over there. All right. So with everybody, if you can, go down to the last page of the worksheet. And in the worksheet, this is our opportunity and remember, we're going to take 5 minutes to work through this. And there's 8 squares. So we may end up, I don't know how we're going to do this, but we may go a little longer than 5 minutes. We come back and see if everybody's ready for this or not. But the opportunity with this is, as you think about if you're coaching clients from your client's perspective or from your business perspective, but what potential black swan events might you face? And remember, this is 1 or 2 things top of mind worksheet. There's no right or wrong answer. Why could these events, why could they impact your organization? What are the top 3 areas of vulnerability? As you think about resiliency, this isn't a strategy, this isn't a tactics component. This is what areas of vulnerability in my organization might I think about from my team's perspective? What are the potential impacts? Choose one black swan event that you may think could occur, and then think through a contingency plan. What might I do? What might my team look like? And what is one new habit you can adopt? And remember on the sheet that we gave you, and then we also gave you a sheet yesterday about ACCT and also habits of a leader. Combine those kind of as you're thinking back and think back those together, and then top 3 actions you might take to build resilience in your organization today. You're not going to get through all of this today.
No.
So if you don't get through all of it today, feel good, because you're not. But the intention is to begin that thinking process. So this becomes part of who you are as a leader, and you're thinking above the event that occurs and thinking at the flow, attention, intention, resiliency, alignment. How does that play with my team? So Blaine?
No, I was going to just say, to Dolan's point here, we're going to be having a breakout session where you're going to actually be exploring some of this stuff. So just, first thought drops in here. The 30-day component of what we're doing is where you will have an opportunity to do a much deeper dive into this. So this is about just kind of planting seeds, just kind of planting seeds, kind of a little exploration. So don't feel as if you need to Dolan's point, get something in every one of those boxes. That's not the point here.
Right.
But just get enough to be able to start a conversation when we put you in the breakout sessions.
Yeah, and we'll do this and then we'll come back. I'm going to set a 5-minute timer. We'll watch the waves like we did yesterday and have an opportunity to work through this. And then we'll come back and talk about it a bit, and then we'll go into breakouts for today. So I'm gonna start our 5-minute timer so that we can get going, and I'll leave you with your thoughts here. few more seconds. Stop our share just so we're in conversation mode here. So how was that exercise for everybody? We're not gonna talk specifics around your, the items that you may have written on your form, but how was that thinking exercise for each of you as you went through it? Anybody want to share something? We are going to go into breakouts where you get to meet in a more intimate mode, but I'm curious about that.
I'm fascinated by how many potential black swan events there are.
Yeah, Chad. Yeah.
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 That was
Yeah.
real cool. Wow.
Yeah, it's funny. I was, I don't know, everybody was heads down. I picked my pen up. I have a printout of was doing the exercise myself, thinking of, because I'm working through my business, thinking of, oh my goodness, I'm the center of the universe for this. And if something happens to me,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Or
Love you,
I was
mean it.
thinking more of the word poof came to mind.
Yeah.
However, any other thoughts?
Well,
Derek, what's on your mind, dude? I see
there's
you
a
out there.
part of me that doesn't like the focusing on what I don't want, as I'm a big law of attraction individual. So for me, I have mixed feelings about predicting the wrong. And there's this fine balance of, like you guys have talked, being prepared for it,
Sure.
but also not creating it.
Right.
And it's just interesting to work through the different questions and see how it made my thought process navigate that. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's a great point. In Stoic philosophy, there's a fatia mori, I think is the actual Latin word for it, but it's anticipating, a black swan. I mean, just kind of what would be some things that might happen out there in terms of the law of attraction. Everything works off of the law of vibration fundamentally. So I don't want to give energy to it, and I want to be prepared in case something happens. And mostly that preparation has to do with where's the seam. Now this stuff will happen, but where's the seam in the current that I can come back to, that I can true back to? How do I know what to do when I don't know what to do? Black swan event, I don't know what to do, but I know where I can stand. That's, provides the foundation that we work with here.
So I kind of felt the same way. It's like I feel like I live our, you always have that black swan. I feel like I live every day knowing that there is a black swan because things I've done in my life, I've had to adapt and switch so fast, so I know how to adapt to a black swan, but right now I'm experiencing a lot of white swans, and that's cool. And I want to ride on the white swans because those are opening left and right. And when I focus on those, even if a black swan sweeps in, it's fine because we know how to deal with it. I know how to deal with it. It's just seamless. But
Perfect.
That's always the case. So I kind of, yeah.
Good.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I'm going to add to that. I mean, because we've actually had to deal with multiple black swans over time, and like you said, when things are in synchronicity and everything's flowing, that's great. But it's like it is worth the time to think about stopgaps. It's like, plan for the worst, expect the best. And it's like, because there are times when those things have happened and we had to do some serious, workarounds. If we had been a little bit of time in preparation, it could have reduced our pivot, quickly. So this is, I think, a valuable exercise to do because you never know. And there's so many different types of black swans. So it's more about, like, I think what you're focusing here is also your own resilience and your own ability to deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to be able to position yourself so that people around you have a sense of equanimity, that they feel, okay, I'm safe here to the degree that I can be safe here. So
Yeah.
that's part of what this does is it creates you as an exemplar, as a standard for people to resonate with.
Yeah. And now I'll add a thought, but Bella, I saw your hand up there. Hi, Bella.
You're on mute. You're on mute, Bella.
Yeah.
There we go.
Sorry. I was just thinking when I filled out the blanks that I was thinking about COVID, a crazy situation like COVID. It could occur again, or nature catastrophics, or anything that we don't want to happen. But you're right, Chad, what you said. Be prepared for the worst, but pray for the best, of course, always. But I think that also the mindset is important here to, like COVID. I could not see some good things about it, but yet I could see some advantages that we could take, that we could learn from it, that we could save a lot of electricity and pollution in the air and things. People got more silence, more mindful, maybe. So maybe also have the adaptability to communicate to our employees how important that it is that we actually are able to adapt to things that we have no control on. Take the advantage of it. Yeah.
Yeah, great statement.
Good. Brian.
Yeah, thank you so much. I actually didn't know that what we experience literally daily in Africa is called a black swan event. There's always a breaking news of something. Now, today morning, I was reading the news back from home, and 4 cars were involved in a terrible accident on the road. And the police caused the accident because it was trying to overtake. And then there was a big truck that was entering the road while other trucks were stopped to wait for it to come. So, and that caused a terrible accident, and people's lives were lost. So, besides the fact that we experience events in our daily life, as a leader, I'm always on standby for the news of events from other people. Like, they will call you, you get the information first. I have lost my father, I've lost my auntie, I've lost. Now, the Ministry of Education did a report, and they shared it with me this morning, that 64% of girls missed school last year as a result of menstruation periods, and they didn't have the tools that they needed. So now you're always thinking about how to solve personal problems, community problems, and then national problems.
Yeah.
So I'm really loving this specific talk because it is giving me insights on, firstly, where to stand before I figure out what to do. And I really thank you so much. Yeah.
Perfect.
No, I'm grateful for you. Grateful. And I love these comments. We're going to go into breakouts here in a second, but I love the comments. And Derek, to your point, I think one of the things, when we're thinking from a perspective of abundance, there was this guy that probably some of you guys may have known this gentleman or not. Blaine and I were blessed to get a chance to get to know him, a guy named Bob Proctor. And Bob, right, one of the things that we talked about was a goal card. We carry, I'm so happy and grateful now that blah 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 blah, and whatever your personal goal was. And I have a goal card that it's in my pocket all the time.
In my pocket too.
Thank you, Bob. But as we think about that from a vibrational state, which is how we think, how we feel, where we are in our lives, really the one thing, and this is important for all of us, when you do the exercise and think of black swan events from a vibrational state, it is not about, oh my goodness, these things can happen. It is about, oh my goodness, these things may happen. What can I do to personally be prepared? How am I going to be me? Where is my I am statement? We talked about I am on day one. What is my I am? And based on my am, how do I instill that into my team, right? Because we know that. And then how do I do it with clarity? Because clarity breeds confidence. Confidence breeds, there's there's a triggering effect within the team. So that's really the intention. So I love you mentioning that from a vibrational state. It is not to dwell on the kind of that state of, oh my goodness, all these bad things are going to happen, but how do I use those bad things to create good?
Yeah, there's an infinite number of states of being, an infinite number of states of being. I get to choose what my state of being is. It's not dictated by external circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. We get to choose those things. All right. So we're gonna move everybody into a breakout. The breakout will be 10 minutes. It is randomly assigned. I have no idea other than I just put people in the room. You're gonna go into room in the room. If you've not met the folks with you, introduce yourself, where you are, what you do. But it's an opportunity to power the mastermind. Think and Grow Rich. This is our chance to leverage that power of the mastermind to share ideas, share concepts. And if you've got a this is where we make friends that stay with us way beyond the 5 days that we're here. This is a chance to share ideas and share thoughts. So I'm going to hit go, move us into the rooms, and then we'll come back and close out for today. Forward.
Who was with whom here?
Some good rooms.
Yeah, that's a nice fit. Welcome back.
Hey, Bella.
Hello.
All right, we'll let everybody, it's going to take about 60 seconds for all the rooms to close.
Well, bring everybody back in, pat you on the head, and send you home.
Into the evenings. A lot of evening folks out there today.
Yeah. There's Laura.
Hey, Laura.
It's good to see you again, Laura.
It
It's
is
good
good.
to be back.
It is good to see you.
Sure have
Tanya?
been
Tanya.
nice. Like portals. It's so cool.
We're going to step into a different reality now. Oh,
Yeah, I know.
portal open up.
We're gonna go. All right. So just we're back from the breakout. We're past our committed time. We had promised to end for today. I know everybody has a lot of things in their day ahead of them. The good experience with your group. Good opportunity to mastermind. Oh, my thumb thing worked today. That's
Some
pretty
things
cool.
work.
There you go,
Yeah.
Blaine.
Hey, there's mine too. Yay.
There we go. Very good. Awesome. Just as we're wrapping up for today, all of this is a reminder. I'll put all of this into the LinkedIn group, and if you haven't joined the LinkedIn group, you can message Blaine or I in LinkedIn, and we'll make sure that you get added into the group. That's an easy thing to go do. So all of the PDFs are in there. The links to the recordings are in there for each day, and that's a place to be in touch with each other, leave comments, and follow each other. And I appreciate it for those of you who've reached out to me over the last couple of days and followed me. So you may unfollow me soon for the amount of content that I post on LinkedIn. So, but I'm glad that you're there.
Not on LinkedIn. I'm sorry. I don't have a LinkedIn account, so that maybe you probably won't ever see me on there.
Don't worry, Tanya.
That's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. Tanya, then we can just from kind of a sidebar, one of the things we can do is I can make sure you get an email with the PDFs attached and then links to the Zooms. So that
Links
way
to
you've
Zoom.
got it. Because this is really about, we picked LinkedIn, by the way, just because we were trying to come up with a central place where people could go. So Tanya, if you're not there, it's more important that you get the stuff than we worry about where you are.
Okay, cool.
So we'll get it to
take
you.
care of that.
Yeah.
All right.
Before you go,
Bartlett?
tomorrow, just kind of tune in tomorrow. Yeah, same time, same station, 9 o'clock. We're going to do a deep dive in context and trust. Those are going to be the two topical areas that we're going to be looking at tomorrow. From a leadership perspective, how do you generate and manage meaning? And what's the foundational platform of trust? And how, trust is a recoverable and renewable asset. That's one way to think about it. So we're going to be playing with that notion a little bit tomorrow.
All right. On that note, have a great rest of your day or evening. Depends upon where you are. Great to see everybody. Thank you for taking time to be with us. we're grateful for that.
Okay,
Enjoyed
Nicole,
it.
I see your message. Not to worry. We'll have it posted, okay?
Thank you.
See you.
Thanks, good.